That is, come on in, one and all, shuffle in. Yes, yeah. There you are.
I think she wanted to make an announcement though.
All right, are they walking in? People are walking. All right. Assalamualaikum everyone. Salam. You guys hear me? So some of you have been asking me what or asking us what global consultation is, and I just wanted to really quick touch on that before we move on to Aaron's speech, inshallah. So one of the reasons why we come to the conference is to unite our beliefs. That's actually one of the most important objectives of the conference. We want to make sure we're on the same page. And every year when we come to the conference, there are topics that need discussion or topics that we're not necessarily unified on, and we want to make sure we are unified. Our goal is unity. So when we get together for the conferences, we talk about those topics, and Jamal named some of them. Like I think one of them was astronomical timing. One was I'm sorry when I say sick. One was alcohol and food. Then there are other topics other communities wanted to talk about, like is going to the conference a commandment, or is it striving, is it a sin, or is it not prioritizing things? And there are many topics people have said they want to talk about. So God willing, tonight and tomorrow night, we're going to get together and talk about those topics. Another one is who's a hypocrite, who can we befriend? There's like many topics that people have brought up. So God willing, we're going to get together and let these topics come up naturally and address them, and inshallah study them together. Thank you. On to Arabic.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, right? I'm ready to go.
So I can start. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I wanted to extend a big shout out to the UK community. I think that I was pretty I don't know, I shouldn't say surprised, but the amount of effort that they put into hosting us and stuff, I think it really deserves a call out, and thank you guys. One puzzling thing though about the UK, my hotel room, it right next to the toilet, it had a telephone. I'm not sure if that's just a London thing or if that's just generally a thing you guys do in the UK. I mean, doesn't seem like the kind of thing you want to be doing when you're on the telephone. Um, yeah, so it seems almost like you have to warn the person you're talking to. Like Mom, if you hear any noises, it's just awful. But okay, so in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, um, I'd like to share an excerpt from one of Mother Teresa's letters to her sister, and I quote, it says, Jesus has a very special love for you, but as for me, the silence and emptiness is so great that I look and do not see, listen and do not hear. And that's all I'm going to share, because this this presentation or this speech isn't about Mother Teresa, but it illustrates a point I plan to make. Lots of people, they pray to God, and some pray as part of like religious ritual, many during times of need. But moreover, people who pray during times of need are often seeking relief or answers to difficult times in their lives. And prayers of this nature, they're obviously not like intended to be a one-way communication. They require a response. The problem is the majority of God conscious people don't understand how God communicates with us. They seem to pray for answers without any sort of understanding of how to expect feedback from God or God's system, as if a voice is just going to kind of suddenly start manifesting itself around them. They look for answers this way, and most of the time I think they don't find them because they don't know where to look. Um, I believe most of the questions that people ask or in their prayers are they're not answers we could get tailor made from God in some booming voice. It doesn't work that way. but they're rather already questions that God has answered. He's already given us the answers to most of the types of questions that people are seeking when they're going through times of need, or they've reached some point of misery where they're searching for some sort of relief or understanding as to why they're going through these things. But the answers are real. The truth of the matter is they're really already out there. From my understanding of the so-called dark letters from Mother Teresa, she had developed doubt over a long period of time because she wasn't seeing the answers to her prayers. She was she was in an extreme state of misery, and we all know why. We understand the system, but she didn't. She thought, I'm doing all these righteous works. I'm devoting all this enormous amount of time to all of these children and these people that she was trying to help, but she was going home internally feeling miserable, and she didn't understand how that could be. And I think she was asking God to help her to understand that, and over time it just got worse and worse and worse. Um, and it brought her to the point where she her misery and her loneliness and her doubt in her faith got so bad that she blasphemed against God. And she acknowledged the fact that she doesn't truly believe he's even there. Um, Now, as I was, from my understanding, the main reason why she wasn't able to understand what was going on in her life is because primarily she didn't understand the scripture. Because all of the answers that she was seeking were actually already there, like, and this is and you see them. And one real quick thing, the reason that I use the word seeing is because the fact is she was receiving signs, and this is the key word for me, signs. She was receiving loud flashing signs through her entire life. um Now, real quick about signs, because I want this is a real important distinction I want to make, just to avoid any potential drama in the questions that are asked. So God gives us a lot of signs. He shows us signs to instill certainty. Like, we see examples of that when God creates the heavens and the earth. He says that we can see signs in the heavens and the earth. He gives us signs to indicate his impending arrival. We have an example of that, the splitting of the moon, and we have a remaining sign, the coming of Gog and Magog, and these are another kind of sign. He shows us signs to give us things to reflect upon, like he's left Pharaoh's body um, in a state where everybody can go and see it, and they can reflect on why that happened. And for a believer, there's things to learn there. And God can show us signs that are very personalized, that we've learned from the footnote of 512, I believe it is, about mathematical signs that he can tailor make for any one of us because we understand the mathematical miracle. But there's one important point I want to make about the specific sign that I'm talking about. And I think in submission, we generally don't refer to these as signs from God. And I know that that's what my speech was called, but I'm gonna make a correction right now to avoid any misunderstandings. These are signs from God's system. And this is an important distinction, because to more illustrate my point about Mother Teresa, God has created a system of cause and effects that on its own is constantly giving us feedback. The quality of our lives is directly related to our belief and our actions, and it will reflect in the most accurate manner where we stand with God. The system that God has created around us is constantly speaking to us on behalf of God. Mother Teresa's mental state of grief, misery, torment, and loneliness and despair was the greatest signs that she could have, if she understood God's system, if she understood the signs that she was getting back from the system, she would have understood what was going on in her life and why she was so miserable. But she wasn't able to see that because she just didn't have the knowledge, and frankly, she just didn't deserve it. That's a more important point. Um, which brings me to more to the point of how this applies to us. The ability to interpret signs from God requires knowledge, right? It requires understanding who God is, and it requires understanding God's system. The message that every single one of us in this room have received, this to me is one of the greatest pieces of, this is like the greatest thing about God's message to me. We have clarifications of these exact details that give us the tools that we need to navigate through our lives and understand how God's system works and how it's applying to our lives in every single moment of our life. Um, and to give an analogy, I'll give you guys an analogy. Like most of you guys know, I've been living in Turkey for the last 2 years now. Periodically, I rent a car, right? Because I know how to drive. You can put me in a country anywhere. Car's got a steering wheel, it's got gas, it's got brakes. I'm good to go. And I can drive in Turkey in long distances, but I don't under and wherever I go, like I can literally see signs everywhere. Like there's so many signs, just like in any country you go to, you're going to see them. And some of them are really, really universal. Like you can look and you can see the shape of this red sign, and you can just about guess it says stop, so you know to stop. Or it doesn't take you long to figure out that in Turkey the yellow light comes before the green light or before the red light turns green. But nonetheless, these are very universal things and you get used to them. But for the most part, I can drive 100 miles in Turkey and I have absolutely no idea what the vast majority of these road signs or even mean or say. It doesn't impede me from getting from point A to point B. It doesn't stop me. It doesn't make my trip too much more difficult. But what can happen is I make this trip in a way where I really don't understand a lot of the things that I'm looking at. And yeah, I can receive like a ticket. The license plate of the rental car could receive a ticket on it, and I find out about it like 3 or 4 weeks later or whatever, however long it takes, because I got a ticket because I didn't know what that sign said. And I was going at a higher rate of speed or whatever. I entered a tunnel. I didn't slow down. And this is the way the vast majority of the people in this world live their lives. They go through life exactly like this. They don't understand why the things are happening around them, but God is giving us this amazing system where everything in it is virtually living, and it's giving us consistent feedback of where we are with God. Um, Now, let me go back to my notes so I don't get too lost here. So this of course this makes complete sense because if you think about it, God doesn't talk to us on a one-way radio, each of us. He doesn't like you don't like I said, I mean anybody who approaches speaking, asking God for answers and expects to hear like this one-on-one communication, this isn't the way the system is designed. He can do this, but this is not what we should expect from God. But the system, it makes perfect sense because as submitters, we know like that there has to be some sort of way that we can navigate through this world and have some sort of feedback. Um, and I believe with God's guidance and this knowledge over time, this can bring anybody who understands how this system works and applies it to their life, it could bring us to eventually becoming a perfect human being if that's what we're striving for. Because it's really simple. You start seeing things that aren't working out in your life. You start identifying problems in your life. You start scrambling to figure out why they're there. You figure them out because obviously if you're seeking the truth, God will help you to understand that. And as you go along, it could take 10, it could take 20 years. Eventually, your life should be doing nothing but getting better. And that's based on this system of cause and effects. This is how God has created the system to communicate with us. So, this to me is a very important point, which illustrates, and the thing that's funny about this is like when you see something that is this amazing of a tool, Satan's not just going to let that go. Like I have heard over the years these ideas that if he's coming in really trying to even confuse this one for us. There's people out there that are convinced now, and they're pushing this view that you can be tested for the rest of your life. And the thing about that is, how does that even work with God's system? If you can't reach a point where you've reached a state of submission where you're living a righteous life, you're following all of God's commandments based on these principles and this purification process, how in the world are you ever going to know that if you don't have some sort of security that this system will respond to your goodness as well? It's just going to keep on returning like bad news to you no matter how good you do. That as absolutely makes no sense to me. So it's important to keep this concept in your mind when you approach this religion, because if you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, we may not all reach that point at the same time, but we should always be moving forward. Now I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I think the stuff I've mostly talked about thus far, I don't know if I've misspoke or said something the wrong way. I'm sure, please remind me if I have. But most of this is basic stuff most of us know, I think, and most of us attempt to, we really work hard to apply to our lives. But now I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent that, um, where I'm going to extend this idea of of where we can get feedback and signs from on a more refined level. So when you look into the Quran, you see traits of the righteous. There's actually quite a few verses in the Quran that they very specifically talk about characteristics that righteous people have. God willing, I'm going to just list a few for you guys. Um, Tread the earth gently. This is a quality of a believer. The believers are supposed to tread the earth gently. In the privacy of the night, they meditate on their Lord and fall prostrate. So those are two qualities, right? They're characteristics or traits of a believer. So, as we're going along in submission, we should be able to identify times that we may not be treading the earth gently. To me, treading the earth gently, it means a lot of things. To some people, it means it's environmental. They think that it's alluding to the fact that we need to be environmentally conscious, and I agree. I believe it does mean that as well. But I believe it means other things too. We shouldn't be loud and obnoxious people boring our way through the earth. We shouldn't be doing things that are the opposite of gentle. If we find things in our lives that we're doing like that, we should be seeking to eliminate them. Those are signs. Like if you don't have that quality, that is a sign your own character, your own actions and your own behaviors are actually indicating to you. If you're not meditating at night on God, if this is a characteristic we should have. Another one is when they are neither extravagant nor stingy. We should be giving charity. And now charity is kind of a hard one because I feel like sometimes we may be giving enough charity, but we may not feel like we are. So this is to me like this. If you ever feel like I feel like if you're not giving up charity, the best thing is to just do more because it can't hurt you in the long run to do more. But we don't want to be stingy and we don't want to be doing less than we're supposed to be doing, right? Um, they don't commit gross sins. Submitters don't commit gross sins. If we're committing gross sins, then we're far away from being on the right track. I'm not saying it's the end of the world if it happens. We all make mistakes, but if we can reach a point where we're no longer committing gross sins and we're in a good path, we're in a good direction. Um, they do not commit sins knowingly. This is really important. Nor they do not commit sins knowingly, nor do they persist in sins. These are things this one characteristic of the believers that applies to just about all these characteristics that you can think about. You can commit sins out of ignorance, but once it becomes manifested to you that it's something you need to work on, you should be working in a direction, or we should work in a direction where we start eliminating that from our lives. Um, we do not bear false witness. Believers aren't supposed to be doing that. When reminded of God's revelations, they do not act as if they are deaf and blind. I've done this before, you catch a reminder at the wrong moment, or it seems too soon, or it wasn't delivered in the best way. If you find yourself this happened to me just the other day at the airport. Like I didn't react to the reminder. I was like not in the mood to hear it at that point. I just wanted to object. And these are qualities that like I think if we get to these characteristics and we're working on them and we're not seeing any of these like at a high degree. I feel like we've eliminated major problems in our lives. We may be in a really good place with God, but these characteristics that I'm mentioning to you guys, a lot of these things are things that we could be fine tuning in our submission. Someone may already be on their way to heaven, God knows, right? But there still may be things in here that could put that person in a better position. So I think like looking at these sort of signs from our own behavior, because the way I look at sins, God will make them manifest to us. He'll work on these things one by one in our lives. And the messenger says it that way. He'll pick things one by one and he'll help you to work on them. I Even though like when something becomes obvious to you, then you're no longer going to be committing it out of ignorance. You got to work on it. But I think really at the end of the day, it's God. Like you put in the effort and you put in the willingness to want to change. None of that's going to happen if God doesn't will that happens. So to me, it comes down to recognizing whether you have those characteristics or not, which all comes down to God guiding you to understand that. And it's like the chicken and the egg first, which one comes first? But I think most of us, we know when we're weak in one of these areas, and this is where we should be working on. And to me, these are a sign that's just basically coming from inside of us. Like we see these things and we should be working on them. Um, And I think that's about it. I've got a couple minutes there. One sign I want to just, I got 2 more minutes. All right, cool, cool. Because so those signs, like now, I want to restate that these are not the typical signs that we talk about from God. I listed the other ones. These are signs that I think we could look at from within ourselves, like and signs that we look at from God's system, because nothing bad comes from God, and that needs to be very clear when we're talking about these kinds of things, because this is like one of the biggest hurdles that I think can be in play for somebody coming to this message that's brand new, is to really be able to accept the fact that when bad things are happening to us, it's because of us. Now, other signs that are pretty cool. Um, God can show us things that, He shows us He's there. He shows us He's supporting us. And I had made a decision to come here, but I had this thing called pager duty at work. And basically what it means is I have to be there. There's no way I can get out of that. And I had made a decision to come here, and I had decided, you know what, I'm just going to be completely absent. If I have a job when I get back, I have a job. If I don't, I don't. So I made that choice, and Layla and I talked about it. And then one thing led to another. And when we got done with the version 2 of our application, they split our teams up. And they decided to put me on a team to support the V1, the version 1 that was going to still be there for another year, which means now I have another job where I probably won't be doing anything for a whole year. But nonetheless, I'll still get paid, so thank God. But anyways, at the same time they did that, they had to flip flop the pager duties. They had to reschedule them. So they rescheduled it to the day I started my vacation. And then I was like, oh, you guys can't do that. I had applied for this vacation months ago. One thing led to another, and they had to rotate everybody. And now my pager duty starts a week later after I get back. So now I don't even have to worry about going back and seeing whether I'm going to have a job or not, for like completely ditching the pager duty. These are kinds of things that God can show us, and these are really amazing signs to me because they're things you don't expect. But when God allows them to play out in front of you, you can't help but to just look. You're sitting there and you're like, "Thank you, God. I didn't expect that. I didn't ask for it, but He saw that that's what He wanted to do, and He made things easy for me. Mashallah, bam."
So thank you, Aaron. I will open up the floor to any questions, comments. Yeah, sure. Those are papers. Someone, please.
I'm going to take that as a good sign. Hugh's hand wasn't up. Right when I saw that, I was like, I'm good. I feel very comfortable with what I said.
Assalamu alaikum. Didn't have a comment really, like that. But I like the what you were talking about in terms of that God gives us signs. And sometimes it's the little things. And I always like as in the UK community, and I know I've heard this from a few of the other communities, and we use our personal stories and our personal adventures in life, what we've been through, to get a message across. And I think it really works. And I love how you use the analogy of what went on in your work environment. And I also love the analogy you gave of driving in Turkey as the roadmap of what we go through in submission. So, mashallah, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it enough? Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Yeah, that was a great speech, and I feel like if we all learn the science, we'd always be going in the right direction. I, it's such a great and profound speech that you've shared, because God does guide us and give us signs, but it's up to us to take heed and follow them. And a lot of us excuse our bad behaviors. Even me with this husky voice, because I'm auditioning for a role as the Godfather. Um, I mean, I could easily just say, well, I was having a good time at the wedding, and we were like screaming hip hop, and it was great, and this is just me having a good time. No, of course not, right? I mean, why me and nobody else? I mean, I don't see anybody else. So I have to take heed. There's a sign there. Pay attention. right? And there's no shame in that. There's nothing bad about it. You know, it's just a blessing that you can see it because most people can't. You know, so therefore, this speech is a very serious speech.
Thank you, Jamal.
You know, that's still not as bad as Noah who lost his voice for a month. Yeah. So now back.
It wasn't a month.
No.
Jeez, you're doing it a month, it's fine.
And it was like 2 years ago.
Mashallah, really, really good speech, praise God. I had two comments. One, I really like how you started off saying, I can't remember the wording, but it was something about how like God isn't the one who's like doing the punishing, it's God's system. It's like,
Yeah.
like you're falling out of God's kingdom. I think that that's really, really important because that's such an easy blasphemy to say and not realize like, oh my gosh, like that's blasphemy. So that's really important, mashallah. And then the second one, just to continue off of what everybody was saying, it's really true. You have to take heed to the signs. And the truth is, you know, as if you're in God's kingdom, you're supposed to have perfect health, wealth, and happiness. So if you're not having perfect health, wealth, and happiness, you need to take heed and realize what you're doing wrong. You're having a moment where you're like, even something really simple, like, oh, I'm feeling a little anxious about something. That means something is wrong, and you have to reflect and figure out what are you doing, what are you thinking, what is wrong that you're feeling that anxiety, or you stubbed your toe. You know, like I have a little Jamil, you're not alone. I have a little scrape on my foot because I danced too hard. You know, so there and think like, okay, like what did I do? Most people would just say, oh, well, I didn't break my foot. It's literally just a tiny scratch, but perfect health. That shouldn't have happened. So this is like it's the little things. You know, it's really important.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna hand it to Ashton. I will say, yesterday I got 2 parking tickets in Edinburgh. $250, 250 quid. No, it's 100. And
Mashallah, that was a very
I'm sure there was.
yes. That was also a really interesting analogy about the driving, not understanding the signs and getting the ticket up. I think I tried really well, but the example, the story of what Priscilla was sharing. One question I have is in regards to Mother Teresa specifically. I just want to clarify that she was receiving the signs. She didn't have the knowledge to sort of understand that those were signs that God was giving her, right? That's one question. Um, because obviously she didn't understand God's system. And then the other thing is in regards to, let's say, as a submitter, you understand that there is a problem and you see that as an issue, that there is something that you have to work on to eliminate that problem in your life. Um, and what would you say is the proper way of reflecting and understanding, connecting the dots? You say, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong, and this is basically the consequence will be the result of that sin. So I just wanted to get your understanding.
Well, from my experience, and you guys all know me very well, like nobody's come into the masjid with more crutches and casts and stuff than I have. So I think it's no surprise that I know how to get a lot of different signs. They're more than just signs, they're consequences, right? And um to me, some of them are really obvious. If to me, if it's a really big thing that can take you off the path, I don't think God's going to allow there to be any sort of confusion. For example, Layla and I have been through this, and when we had some pretty hardcore hit, we weren't confused about why it happened. I think when it's detrimental to your salvation, God's going to make it happen in a way. He's going to allow it to happen in a way. Let me correct that. He's going to allow Satan to inflict us with harm in a way where it won't be a question mark. Um, but sometimes we get these things where they're little things and we're not quite sure. We end up reflecting and maybe cherry picking 3 or 4 different events out of our day, and end up repenting for a lot of different things. And I have had those. ones where I wasn't quite sure what it was, and sometimes I never really figure it out. But I feel like if it's a repetitive thing, eventually you reach a point where you do figure it out. All we can really do is do our best in in those smaller cases to try to do our best to repent for whatever we can think of. The thing about Mother Teresa, you were asking me, you basically suggested what I meant, and then you want validation. Yeah, Mother Teresa, like everybody in this world, whether you're a believer or not, we all know the concepts. You either live in God's kingdom or you're in Satan's kingdom. One means God is protecting you while we're here in Satan's kingdom, and the other means you're privy to whatever happens in his chaotic world, right? Um, so Mother Teresa was experiencing the chaos and the misery and the loneliness and all of the things that go without being an individual who is protected by God because she wasn't with God. And she didn't know that. Obviously, like I don't think she ever really understood God's system that way. Um, so yeah, like that applies to all of us. It applies to everyone out there. That's why I use the analogy of the traffic signs because most people go through this world and they think these things are just either happenstance and the bad luck or whatever. Or some people might even make a connection to like karma. They're a little bit closer, at least to the ones that just think these things happen by happenstance. But nonetheless, everybody, I think, is exposed to this system, and that's what I meant. Yes. Okay. That's it, guys?
No, one bit
Oh, oh,
dealing with recently. How do you not allow yourself to become numb to the signs? So let's say you have something that's chronic, that's repetitive. I feel like myself and maybe some others, they end up in a situation where they think that, oh, it's just become normal. I'll give you an example. Let's say my like lower back hurts, right? Or you go to the gym often and you start experiencing something. And in the beginning, you might think, okay, like this is a problem, but it continues weeks, potentially months. And then unknowingly, or you kind of subconsciously, your ego tells you this is normal. So how do you catch signs early?
well, I don't know that I have the answers to that because I had like a torn meniscus that I felt issues with for years and then I ended up in Turkey and I wanted to get involved in Thai kickboxing. So I asked God if he'll make it go away so I could do that. And within a week it was gone. So I can't explain that. But it wasn't gone before that. And I know submitters that have had issues that have been elongated for a long time. They at least they never told me they figured them out. So I honestly I don't have all the answers to that stuff. I think I just feel like we all know God's system. I don't have any magic remedy to it. Like sometimes I don't figure things out. Like I wish I could give you a better answer than that. I just can't. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. So done with the speeches. So thanks. I'm here only myself retiring, being MCs. Tomorrow being announced. Then for tonight, we have the global consultation. But I think we're actually going to set up the chairs, hopefully in a circular fashion, that open area, and then kind of no. It's not something. Yeah. I'm getting two conflicting answers in the private group. Sorry. So here's the thing. No, that's fine. Because we do want to put this in this answer. No one's trying. People knows. So give us 30 seconds while we figure out what to do, but can I make a suggestion? Just sit like what's fine with you. Okay. I like it. It sounds like a veto. It sounds like you collectively thinks the best. Or basically if you have mule and move crazy move. Kind of. Stop touching the air conditioning, we're gonna do and it's gonna turn off the AC and just run on you. So I don't go my ring. Because I want. Every 5 seconds, next month. Okay. I got something on the same drive. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum, everyone who's listening from around the world. We will be transitioning into the Discord. So if you have the link, please click on that and join if you want to listen to the global discussion that's going to occur right now. We're going to take hands of some topics that want to be discussed by the global community. And then those are going to be the topics we're going to be focusing on tonight. And we're going to focus on a few topics, not too many. We just want to unify our beliefs on those and then move on, make sure everyone's on the same page. And those topics are, have we pre-discussed them or no? There is a list. Bushra is saying there is a list. Where is the list?